You know, in the world of computers, there's a lot of myths and mystical solutions to mysterious problems that don't make any sense, and people will continue to advise one another to do these things that are often dangerous, but sometimes work, but they don't fully understand the risks they're taking or that they're imposing on others by recommending such dangerous solutions to what could be a very simple problem. So what brings us all up is hard drive data recovery. There are a lot of people, I mean a lot of people on the internet that will tell you, this cracks me up, that you could put a hard drive in the freezer and potentially get the data back. But it doesn't always work. Yes, it does sometimes work, but there's an inherent danger when you do that. All right, so I've got a brand new hard drive and I've put it in my freezer right over here. Let me go get it out. Okay, here we go. One brand new, never opened, sealed up hard drive. Okay, it's in the bag. It's never been used. Let's go ahead and open it up. The very first time this drive has been opened up. And it's a Western Digital 80 gig IDE drive. And it is cold. Now, one of the first things you'll notice on this drive, let me bring it up to the camera here, is this. You see my fingers leaving streaks? I'm wiping the frost off of it. Okay, that frost is probably going to be on the inside of the drive as well. And what does that mean for your data? Or what does that even mean for a professional data recovery team to even retrieve that data? But let's find out, because hey, this is just a theory I have. I need a T8 Torx bit, which I'm going to put on my screwdriver here. And this is just a security bit. It's called a 100-piece security bit set from a company named Drill Master that's sold at Harbor Freight Tools at locations around the United States. They have stores. All right, got a good angle there, right? Let's go ahead and remove the outer screws. Now, I also want to warn you that if you take the cover off of a hard drive, unless you know the specific Torx settings for these screws, this drive probably won't ever work again. So to take it apart when it's not working is a huge, huge mistake unless you know what you're doing. So I don't know what the Torx specifications are for these screws, which means even if I don't do anything other than unscrew these screws and remove the cover and then put it all back together without touching anything, this drive will not work anymore. Unless by luck I happen to tighten the screws down to the right torque. Now, as you see, I'm removing the 6 screws along the outside edge, but there is one hidden screw, and that holds the hard drive, the head stack in place. It's right there. And if I just jam this in there, I should be able to get to it that way. Let's see what we got. It's under here somewhere. There it is. I'll just peel that back. See that screw right there? That's the one I'm getting. Now we can remove the cover. Here we go. Let's see what we got on the inside. Well, you know what? We might have another screw here somewhere. Let's see. Yep, I feel one right there. Well, I feel something right there. No, it's not there. By just pressing down on the label, I can often feel where the indentation is for a screw. Just trying to see why this lid should easily pop off unless I'm missing a screw somewhere. And it feels like it's over here. See, the whole right side of it's coming up. Oh, there it is. It just broke free. Okay, so inside, and this is critical. If you can get a good look at what's going on here, we have frost It's not as bad as I imagined it would be. I imagined there would be rust. But you can see there's frost on this mirror. And it's no different than if you look in the mirror after you get out of the shower and the shower's all fogged up. The same thing happens when it gets too cold. In fact, look up why it rains. The reason why it rains is when hot air and cold air mix up in the sky and it creates rain. I mean, that's a simplistic explanation. But effectively, when you put a hot drive, and a drive doesn't have to be hot because it was on. It could be hot because you live in Arizona and it's 100 degrees, you know, just in the room that you're in, and you stick it in a cold freezer and you're going to have condensation. Now, this drive has frost all over the platters. And these platters have to be completely smooth, mirror finish. And that frost right there is going to melt into water, and it's going to leave water driplets on this platter. And that means any future data recovery will be about impossible from a professional who knows what they're doing. If you ask any professional who knows what they're doing, and the key word here is professional, because if they didn't know what they were doing, they wouldn't be a professional. They will tell you 100% of the time, never, ever, ever put a hard drive in a freezer. And by doing so, you are risking ever getting the data back again. So in other words, it is Russian roulette with your hard drive. It either may work for you, or if it doesn't, chances are you've ruined any other possibility. That was your last ditch thing you could possibly try. So I don't recommend it. I think if your data is important enough to retrieve, I wouldn't play games with it and gamble with it. And despite some stories on the internet of people claiming that putting the hard drive in the freezer has helped, if you talk to experts such as Scott Moulton over at My Hard Drive Died, or Brian Cometa over at $300datarecovery.com, I'm sure they will advise you to not do that. And their data recovery services are not inexpensive. They are inexpensive compared to what large corporations charge. But you look anywhere from $300 data recovery from Brian Cometa versus $700 or $800 starting from places like My Hard Drive Died, and looking upwards of $1,200 to $2,500 from places like On-Track and other big corporate clean room environment data recovery services. So once again, I want you to see the frost that's developed on this drive. And you know, one person might say, well, you put it in the freezer too long. Well, how long is too long? How can you possibly know the heat of the drive, assuming it's at room temperature? I mean, most people are probably going to take the drive off after they've unplugged it, which means it's going to be even hotter on the inside. But assuming you let the drive cool down to room temperature and you put it into your freezer, this is what you're going to do to your drive. So some people say, well, don't put it in the freezer that long. Okay, well, how long is too long? There's no way to know. So if you want to play with it, if you've got a drive you don't care about, like for me, I didn't care about this drive, so it doesn't matter to me. Go ahead and see for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And you'll see that professional data recovery services like On-Track, MyHardDriveDied.com, and $300 Data Recovery do not put a hard drive in a freezer. That is not part of a normal professional data recovery. That's something your Uncle Willie does in the garage, you know, for fun. No offense to Uncle Willie, he's a fun guy, but I'm just saying. The bottom line here is it reminds me of other shortcuts people take. I had a gentleman once put bread in the pipe outside of my house, the pipe that feeds water to my house, in order to drain the water out of the pipe because he couldn't get the solder hot enough with water in the pipe. So he tried to boil the water out by burning the crap out of my pipe, turning it black. Then he got frustrated and stuck bread down in my pipe so the bread would soak up the water so that he could then get the pipe hot enough to melt the solder. No professional plumber would ever do that. A professional plumber is going to take the water out of the inside of the pipe with a siphon. It's very simple. You could even, if you ever placed your finger over a straw on a glass of something you're drinking, a cup of something you're drinking, and you've got a straw, you put your straw in the drink, you put your finger on top of the straw, keep your finger there and lift the straw out, what happens? The water from inside comes out. Well, what do you think a professional plumber does when he's got to get water out of a pipe? He's going to use that similar technique. He'll get a smaller pipe, stick it inside, put his finger on top of it, and drain it that way. Or he'll get a small rubber hose and siphon it out that way. That's why there's a difference between a professional and a hobbyist. And this right here, this is a bad drive. So I'm going to let this sit here for a minute as we watch it defrost and see if the platters have any marks on them. Again, the platter should be 100% mirror finish. Should be no defects, marks, fingerprints, none of that. This is a very, very delicate surface. So the proof is always in showing you. I can tell people this all day long and they'll choose to believe who they want to believe. And it's your hard drive and it's your data, and you do anything you want to do. You want to put your drive in the freezer, you go right ahead. But just remember, I showed you this. With that, let's check back on this in just a few minutes and see how it looks. Okay, now a few minutes have passed, and the platter has actually cleaned up quite nice. The frost, I mean, the drive is still still ice cold. There are still some marks. I don't know how well the camera is going to pick it up, but there are still some blemishes on the platter. I see one right here, and I'm not touching it. I see another one right here. And whatever data exists in those spots, and remember the data is written microscopically, there can be a lot of data in that little tiny speck of a spot. On the other hand, if the drive wasn't very full, knowing that the drive writes from the inside out, and that blemish is sort of past the 50% point, there may not be data there, or it may not be important data. It could be something like a swap file. But these are the risks you run when you put a drive in the freezer. There's a blemish. There's a blemish. And there's more to this platter than just what we're seeing. There's another side to it. Some drives have multiple platters, and so you have this concern that's multiplied by how many platters you've got, and then of course each side of that platter. So I hope this information helps you when you are looking for ways of recovering data yourself. I would avoid the freezer, and I would avoid doing anything that removes the cover off of the drive unless you simply want to see how a drive looks on the inside and you have no desire to get the data back. In which case, stick it in the freezer, open it up, do what you want with it. But remember, the focus on this is on data recovery. And on data recovery, unless you're in a clean room, a dust-free environment that's completely controlled as far as temperature and everything else that a clean room's got to be adjusted to for this kind of delicate repair work, then this is just drive suicide, or at the very least data suicide by doing it yourself. So there are other techniques. This channel is really intended to be a channel for novices, so I don't think I'll ever get into the techniques for data recovery because it really goes outside the scope of what my channel is really designed for. But there are other YouTube videos out there that show data recovery, and be sure and check those out. And there's a great podcast called My Hard Drive Died with Scott Moulton. Scott has a website I mentioned earlier, myharddrivedied.com, where he does professional data recovery services and is even a licensed private investigator so that he can do data recovery and forensics on drives involving criminal cases where he can testify on behalf of the state as a certified investigator, which some states require. I believe he's in Georgia. And what you would do is you would call him and make arrangements to send your drive to him, and then the process goes from there. And again, Brian Cometa over at $300 Data Recovery, he's a great first stop. Is in the Los Angeles area, and he doesn't open the drive up. So that means if he can't get it back, you know, if the drive is damaged in a way that he can't get the data back, he can send the drive back to you without causing any harm to the drive that would potentially defeat the ability of getting the data back any other way, which is what the freezer does. The freezer it's an all or nothing. Last ditch effort. If it's not going to work, you might as well forget any other type of data recovery. So I just wanted to stress the importance of that. And I'll try and get this video out before Christmas just to give you a little something to, little last bit of education for 2014. Hope you enjoyed it. I will see you next time. And always remember, laugh more, smile more, and have more fun. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.